Ta-da. So yeah, like I said, welcome everybody. We are doing things a little bit different tonight. We're going to do a wonderful Q&A with Kelly later, but first we're going to have a good old chat. We're just going to dive into a good old chat. So if you have questions, and you don't want to forget them, you can put them in the chat, but just know that I'm not going to actually look at them because I'm going to try to focus on this first, and then we'll get to them as soon as we get to the whole Q&A portion of this thing. So yeah, so as I said, tonight's theme is the importance of finding your authentic voice. And to introduce Kelly effectively in this arena, I feel like I need to tell you a personal story about how she's impacted me. 5 years ago, I was living what younger me would have considered the dream, and yet I really wasn't happy, and I did not know why. So I reached out to this lovely lady and began a journey that little did I know would end up with me breaking up with my Hollywood dreams entirely and creating a coaching program that is now so in line with my authentic self and what I'm here to do in this life that now all I have to do is wake up every morning and be me, and I'm automatically productive and thriving, which is huge. So for those of you that don't know me, the coaching program that I created is called Loving the Process. And it teaches writers how to love the process by actively coaching them through it while writing their next or their first book or script. And why did I create it? Why is it so in line with me? I think it's likely because for the better part of the last 30 years, I did not enjoy the process at all. In fact, for a lot of it, I was quite tortured by it. I had even convinced myself that the torture might be a good thing, that it might be the source of my brilliance. So, better not give that up. And needless to say, I discovered that I was very, very wrong. It was a bit of a rude awakening when I woke up to the discovery of all the ways I had wounded and been holding myself back for all those years. There was lots of grieving and untangling, but Kelly helped shepherd me through it because she's like the Sherpa for the dark night of the soul. And now I find myself on the other side, armed with a roadmap that I actually created while I was trying to dig myself out from under the middle of it. I created a process in the form of a curriculum that as a writer I can lean into and I can love. And the fun's really just getting started because, like, starting next year, for example, Loving the Process is going to be sponsoring a very slow writing challenge with me and my curriculum as its pace car. My goal is going to be simple. I'm just going to write a novel very slowly, with my primary marker of success being how much I can succeed simply at enjoying the act of doing it. Not looking for the product, not looking to, oh, when I finish this, I'm going to get rich and famous. No, I want to actually figure out how to enjoy loving every inch of what's going to be a minimum of a 2-year process, I've decided. And I will share that journey every step of the way so that other writers can join in on that fun too. But more about that later, lots more. You're going to see lots from me in the future about it. I want to get back to the person who helped inspire all that in me. She is my mentor, my coach, but also my friend, sincerely, and even sometimes my student, because that's how badass she is, Kelly Carlin. She does not mind being also taught. And I wanted her to come and chat with us because not only is she a fellow writer and creative like us, she's one of those way showers that can be such a secret weapon for all of us creatives. She has been for me, because sooner or later, we all hit those moments where we feel stuck or we question if we even have what it takes, question whether we're creative enough, smart enough, interesting enough. But, I've come to discover, what if the reason we can't get to the place where we can write our best work is because we haven't done the work to connect with our unique and authentic voice, the theme for tonight. And nobody understands how hard it can be to connect with and give ourselves permission to develop our own authentic voice more than Kelly. Just imagine trying to find your unique voice while having to climb out from under the shadow of your dad, who happens to be a beloved legend. a legend for his unique voice. I could talk to her I could talk about her actually all day, but without further ado, I'm just going to introduce her: the writer, the performer, the dream tender, the coach, the Jungian psychologist, truly, the shepherd for the dark night of the soul, the personal growth nerd, best-selling author, and now Emmy Award winner. Everybody. Yes. So Kelly, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly.
I know that was a bit effusive, but I had to do it.
I'm very seen. I feel very seen right now. So thank you. And yeah, and it's been an incredible, it's just been one of those magical journeys, you and I journey together, and all the dances we've done. And yeah, it's like the work that I envisioned in the world that I wanted to do. You're one of those people that it just, the tuning fork that I hit, the vibration was the same vibration you were looking for. And it's just always such an incredible experience, even, as a writer or a performer or someone who's creating something to offer to people into the world. I mean, that's all we're ultimately looking for, is like, hey, this is my vibe, and people go, oh yeah, I like that vibe, or that vibes with my vibe. And so it's always an incredible experience to have that and to be seen and heard in that way, and to have that intuition like we do as creatives, where it's like, oh, I feel this character, or I feel this story I have to tell, or I feel this thing I have to create, because people need to be having this conversation for themselves in the world. So I truly, truly appreciate it. And I'm honored to be here and be in your community tonight, and to hang out and talk about what we do and what I do, and answer any questions or ask questions.
Yes,
I get to
I
ask
have
questions.
lots of questions for you first, and then everyone else can ask questions.
Okay, that sounds fair.
So I'm going to dive right into the deep end with the first question, because our theme is finding our authentic voice and how important that is. So my first question, is, when was the moment you realized you needed to find your own authentic voice, or things were moving nowhere good?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and I think for a lot of people, it always comes out of crisis. And so I think it's an ongoing onion peeling of that. Like I always get to a new layer of like, oh, now I've got this level of authenticity. But certainly I made some very unhealthy choices in my 20s and got stuck in a marriage, and something real was dying to come out of me, and just to live, I wasn't even thinking creative at that point. And I ended up going back to school to UCLA and really finding my intellect there. But really the big creative explosion awakening happened for me at the same time as a big spiritual awakening, was when my mother died. I was 34. She was a month away from being 58 years old, and died. And after her death, and the grieving process that I went through was very intense, but almost immediately there was something in me that was like, death is real. Like, oh, there really is an end point to this lollygagging. I was still coming out of the trauma of my 20s at 34. And so I was still very, very confused and lost and had no idea what I was doing. But suddenly it was like a big slapping wake up call. And I felt compelled to start expressing myself, and started doing some comedy shorts for the internet, the early internet, when the screen was this big. You'd have to watch something on the screen. You youngins wouldn't remember that. That was 25. That was 25 years ago, kids. And then I wrote my first solo show in 1999, and I that was the first thing that really, really was my rawest, most authentic expression. So yeah, I would say my mid-30s with my mom dying really woke me up, and really terrified me in some ways. There's a terror that if you don't get this expressed, all is for naught. And that's really what I woke up to, was that intense longing for that.
Yeah. Well, and even the act, though, then that it propelled you to, eventually of writing your one woman show.
After my dad died. So yeah, I mean, there was a long journey between 1999 and then 2009, basically, when 2009, when I started writing my solo show that I ended up touring around the world, or not the world, but well, yeah, I went to Montreal. I guess I could technically say the world. I wish I'd toured around the world. I toured a bit around the country. But that really then my dad's death gave me permission to come out of that ridiculously large shadow in my life. And actually, I'm starting right now something that I tried to start in 2016. I tried to start writing my second book, my solo show, A Carlin Home Companion. I ended up doing it in New York and got a book deal. And it ended up becoming a memoir, which was my real dream. A performance too, but really, I mean, having a book
was. If you haven't read it, I'm just giving a plug there. Please do. That was actually why I ended up like a fly to honey to you.
And after that, I, kind of like, you write a book and you do a solo show, and I kind of like all my stuff came out and it all happened. It all really actually happened for me. And then there was the, oh, what now thing happened to me too. And I tried to write a second book right away. And I tried it as like a memoir, and I tried it as like a kind of a self-help book, and kind of all these different ways. And I had people that really wanted it and all this kind of stuff. And it never came together. And it was and I kind of reached another kind of crisis point. And that's when I started my coaching business, which I'd been doing before my dad died. I got my master's in psychology, and I was a certified coach. But I didn't realize until about 2 years into my coaching program that everything I wanted to write about, that I wanted to share about having the courage to find your authentic voice and having the courage to take it out into the world and what that takes to do that, I turned into a coaching program. And I didn't even realize it. It was like this, it was like all the parts of it were there. And so now here I am 5-6 years later, actually finally ready and turning back around to my creative life and working on a new performance piece about the actual journey that I took when my dad died, and what I went through and what I had to face, the fire I wanted to walk through, the whole literally coming out of the shadow and standing literally in my father's light on a stage kind of a thing. So I'm super excited because I'm kind of in now my creative process. I feel like I'm kneading the dough. I'm kneading the dough right now. So, and it's just lovely to have my creative life back in front and center for me right now.
Yeah, and meanwhile, while you're doing it, you're inspiring a bunch of other people to find their voice through that program. But back to the actual work of writing the book and then doing the one woman show, and eventually, I know it's been at least a 15-year journey with that. But even right from the beginning, when you started to try to tell your story, what would you say were the changes you started to notice, the benefits from doing so?
Oh, well, it's funny because before my dad died, I tried to do a solo show. It made my dad uncomfortable. So I put it on a shelf and I ended up going to grad school and did that for 3 years. And that's where I learned Jungian psychology and counseling techniques and all of that. And I decided not to become a therapist, but a coach coming out of it. But what I landed into right away when I graduated was a storytelling community here in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And I got to sit in a living room, and two things happened for me. Was I got to sit in my friend Wendy Hammer's living room. She has a show called Tasty Words in Los Angeles for storytellers. And I got to start to write my story in this like private cocoon, which I'd already been doing at Pacifica. I went to this very groovy grad school where you got to do a lot of art and then process your psychological stuff. And immediately I began to trust myself. Like, I think more than anything else, there's something about when we're afraid of our creativity, or we avoid it, or we do the dance with it, the main issue is trust. There's something inside of us that needs to trust ourselves in order to do that. And the thing that I think we need to trust is that we won't abandon it again.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a dance we do a little bit with our voice where we go closer and express more, or go towards it, and then we back away again when it gets a little too scary. And I feel like every time we back away too much, we're betraying ourselves in some level. Just like in life, when we back away from our truth, we're betraying ourselves.
Absolutely.
And so there's a trust in that, and then, but also finding allies. Finding allies is so important. Rooms like this, living rooms where people are writing their stories, where you're learning the craft. I mean, that was the other thing that happened too, was just the act of writing over and over again, and the shitty first drafts over and over again, and finding then the moment or the phrase, or finding your voice, finding like, oh, that's the way I say it, and when you're in a class with people, you hear people doing their stories, and it's like, oh, I don't do stories like Betty. I would listen to Betty's stories forever, but I'm not a Betty writing story. That's not me, and so you start to see your uniqueness too. And then there's the courage piece. Mm-hmm. There's, for me, I wrote to perform. I wasn't writing at that point, I wasn't writing for a book. I had ideas about that and stuff, but I wanted to be on a stage and telling my stories. And so any way we bring our work out into the world, whether we're telling them, or we're publishing them on Substack, or we're trying to get a publisher, or we're self-publishing, or we're, pitching screenplays, whatever it is, there's a courage that we need to find for ourselves. And that comes from the trust, like the courage is built on the trust
that you were talking about. Because I know my experience, like even with you, with working up finally on my own voices, and there's a lot of folks that are in Hollywood that are here on the call, and it's like,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, in Hollywood, I found it was constantly like, what do you need? I can be that. I can be that. And you spend a lot of time going, I can be whatever you need. And then you don't know who you actually are.
Yes.
And what I discovered is you're flowing in the breeze with that. Stan.
Yes. One of my teachers, I only worked with him for about a year, but right after my dad died, I started working with Jeffrey Tambor in his master class in Santa Monica at Santa Monica Playhouse. And the thing he taught that I loved so much, and I still think about it, and because he, had lived and survived and failed and succeeded in Hollywood for so many decades, was this attitude that because of how Hollywood is constructed, it's very much a hat in hand position. Hi, I've got this hat. I need it to be full. Please give me whatever you have, whether as an actor, it's a role, or as a writer, it's a job. And very few and far between people, sit in Hollywood and go, okay, we're going to do that, and can greenlight their own stuff, And so that hat in handness, I think, really creates an inner reality that is parallel to just life in general. Like, how do we do that in life? Screw for now Hollywood and trying to get work, or even trying to get our work done, or our work seen and heard, or whatever. But that thing of it's a codependent stance.
Yeah, even just go home for the holidays and watch yourself, blend into the wallpaper because you just lost you.
Exactly. And I'm, recovering codependent. That's what I do. That's who I am. I'm an only child in a family of addicts, let alone showbiz addicts. So for me, like, having to unpack my own codependence, and I'm still doing that. I'm always doing that. Again, it's the onion, right? But it is that thing about who am I and how do I declare to myself who I am and declare to the world who I am while still being in relationship with it. Mm-hmm. Because that's the thing I find so much with clients who come to me is part of the fear of being authentic, part of the fear of asking for what we need is we feel like we're going to lose all connections. Like our husbands and our kids and our family and friends are going to go, well, that's insane. That's crazy. I don't like you anymore. Mm-hmm. And 99 out of 100 times we do the more authentic version of ourselves. And there's like, nobody's having a shit fit. No one's freaking out. No one's, I mean, every once in a while, yeah, I've had a few clients who are like, oh, I'm going through a divorce now. Well, that doesn't surprise me. That probably was going to happen anyway, but now we've just accelerated it, you know? So, but yeah, it is that fear of rejection.
Yeah.
As artists,
fear of being weird. You were like, what's this whole thing about you being afraid that everyone's going to think you're weird? And then
yeah, I'm like, girl, your weirdness is your power.
And it turns out, guess what? Everyone knew.
Yes, that's the thing. Everyone knows who we are. I mean, if they're in our life for any length of time, they know who we are. And think about everyone here. Think about your friend, the friend you have that you want for them to be able to be freer, to be more of who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you wish that for them. Yeah.
You wish that for them. You're like, turn up the volume on your weirdness. Turn up the volume on your intellect, on your brilliance, on your crazy art collages, on your big-heartedness, whatever it is, you know, people who are in our corner and truly in our corner really want us to turn up the volume of our authenticity. And so we don't walk around in survival mode. We don't think that. In survival mode, it's all about conforming, don't make waves, conforming, don't make waves, because that's what we were taught at 5 years old in our families. That's how we all survived. But now it's we're not 5 anymore. We're not surviving in our family. We're actually autonomous adults. Imagine that.
We have to look around and go, oh, right. Yes, no.
Yeah, there's no one here stopping me. It's just me. It's this thing in here.
So my next question then is, back again in those early days when you were taking those initial steps, what support did you get? What were the most important steps you took to sort of get out of that crisis mode and into, who was around, who were your allies?
I mean, so many along the way, but I mean, early on after my mom died and doing my very first solo show, I went to my dear friend, Amy Wazorek, who was an actor and a director. And I had written a rough draft of this thing that I wanted to say to the world about my mother's death and my crazy life. It was called Driven to Distraction, my first show. And I hadn't shown it to anybody. And I read it to her and she just laughed and wept through the whole thing. And then it was like, okay, like I'm not crazy. So there's always that first person, that first room. You have to be careful who that person is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because if it's not the right person, they could be a person that has their own dream and might shit on yours a little bit, and you don't want that energy
in theirs.
Yeah, you need kind of an unconditional, like you're one of your real unconditional friends, not because they're just going to be yes people, but because they have big enough hearts to hold it. And that's the thing, it really does take a village. There's just no way to do this creative process. I mean, I wouldn't know how to do it without a village. I'm always in awe of, I think, like fiction writers who I imagine the men fiction writers of the 50s and the 60s alone in their attic, their wives would lock them in their rooms for 8 hours or whatever it is. But they had a wife to lock them in their room, damn it. That was their ally. And they put them food, exactly.
Tell them they're amazing.
And it really does take allies. And it takes, and the work I do with people around this is, I teach people to have inner allies too, because it takes the inner village also. It takes the voices within us, discovering them and owning the ones that believe in us. that have the wisdom, that are the mentor. I have a lot of dead comedian friends who are my mentors. I mean, just this is not a name drop moment at all, but I'm just going to let you know these chairs right here were Gary Shandling's chairs. He was my mentor. Sometimes I sit in these chairs and I talk to Gary because he's in the other chair.
Why wouldn't you?
It's something we call voice dialogue, active imagination. It's a Jungian thing. So, you need and they don't have to be dead comedians.
Well, and he was your alive mentor too.
But he was my alive mentor. But it could be Gandalf. It could be, having an imaginal conversation with your grandmother, or your favorite writer who's alive or dead, or some fictional character, or just some dream figure of yours. We do a lot of figure work and ally work and stuff like that. So allies are just so essential. But the other part too is to really understand that doing your creative process and moving your creative work out into the world is an incredible vehicle for self-realization, because you're going to meet yourself along the way over and over again. You're going to meet the saboteurs. You're going to meet the dysfunctional relationships that keep you small, that keep you distracted. And, and that's why for me, it's always been hand in hand, inner work, creative work, inner work, creative work. They just kind of feed each other over and over again. And as creatives and writers, the advantage we have is we are self-aware. We are people who observe the human condition. Yeah. We're intelligent. We all have our unconscious. We all have our bullshit. We all have our blind spots. Of course, that's why we write, because we love writing through characters who have blind spots. And when you're a memoir writer, you're writing about your own blind spots and how you got to see them. But it really is a chicken and egg thing for creatives. And if you don't do the inner work, that old archetypal, miserable, drunk, poor creative, it's like, oh, well, that's who we're supposed to be in order to have our soul plugged into the creative, the life force or something. No, you can have healthy boundaries and be a wild and weird creative. You can do that. It works.
Yeah, I've done both. This is better.
This is a lot less work.
Yeah, no, I really did get to the other side of that and realize, oh no, I can actually be more creative.
Yes. And without all of the total self just torture.
I thought I had to feel when I came to you, I was trying to save the world.
Yes.
I thought I had to listen to every last pain that ever existed on the planet and write about that. No, I remember it when the time's right. In a moment, it's fine.
Yes.
I don't need to keep doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what were the biggest challenges for you and obstacles and overcoming? Was it all those codependent relationships or
yeah, I think it was. I mean, I couldn't really do my solo show work until my dad died. I mean, that's just the way it was for me. And it was, he was too important to me, and it was just the way it was. And it was my life path. And I think for me, there's something about, because I'm just starting to write about this a lot, but there is something about, I don't know, artists and writers and creatives can be such catastrophizers. We've got really good imaginations. And so we imagine the worst case scenario if we were to, whatever it is, we just imagine this thing. And it's very humbling to keep doing the thing, and then the horrible thing doesn't happen, and you go, oh, God, am I full of shit? God, am I? God, I mean, because that's as egoic as the one who thinks their shit don't stink. You
Mhm.
know, if you think your shit stinks more than everyone else's, is just as bad as the other version of it. It's still an ego stance. And so, you know, being a creative and putting your stuff out there in the world is humbling, but not in the punishing, humbling way. It's in the, oh, it is just about the work. And someone needs to hear what I have to say today. And someone needs to hear this story. And I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
Um, and that's been the biggest gift for me of my work, is trusting that, you know, those couple of years after my mom died, and this initial longing and urge to tell my family's story and to tell her story, to make sure she didn't disappear, because
Mhm.
wives of legendary people are completely invisible. Kids normally have a little more of a chance to kind of make their mark because it's a different generation. And then to see where that is now 25 years later, and what happened last year with the documentary, the full arc of that um is incredible. And to explain what I mean by that is, I about 4 years ago, oh, it was 3 years ago, it was March of 2020, we hired Judd Apatow and his team to direct my father's documentary for HBO. I'm an executive producer on the project. And then, of course, within 10 days, the pandemic shut the whole world down, which was fine because they could go off and do their archival stuff. But when I handed the project to Judd, I did not want any editorial control at all. I didn't want my hands in any of it. I just gave him some basic marching orders. A, make it unique. I don't want a bunch of talking heads. I hate those kind of documentaries. Make it unique and as innovative as my father was. And I trusted Judd because he did such an incredible job with Gary Shandling's doc.
Mhm.
And I told him, I said, just, you know, make sure you make my dad human. Like, make sure he's a human being. And I want to learn something about my dad that I never knew before, which was an impossible thing to say to a director, because he's like, well, I don't know what you know. But anyway, those are my terms. And then I just let them go and let them have it. And what happened was, 2 years later, I got the rough cut in December of 2021, got the rough cut and watched it and was like, oh, fuck. I'm in this thing. Like, I was not, they interviewed me twice. I mean, I knew I was in it, but I was like, holy shit. And he really, and I don't have my book here, otherwise I would hold it up right now. He took my memoir and really mined it for the family story. And the reason I wrote that story, and the reason I wrote the very first solo show where I started to tell my family story, was because I wanted people to know that even though we were an extraordinary American family, we were one of the most ordinary American families, because everything we faced, mental health crisis, you know, actual physical heart disease crisis, addiction, and then the dance that families do with each other around truth telling and not truth telling and all that kind of stuff, and the elephant in the room stuff, all that stuff, the dysfunction. My family is just like your family. And I knew from day one that that was true. And it took 25 years for it to fully manifest into this documentary. And when we won the Emmy, I knew in my heart of hearts, it was like, you know, this thing wouldn't have won the Emmy if our family's story hadn't been part of the story, if my mom's story hadn't been in there, if my dad's humanity hadn't been in there, which was never on the stage. People thought they knew my dad. He never talked about himself on stage.
Yeah, we knew all the other stuff.
Richard Pryor talked about himself on stage. My dad never did. So it's that, and the reason I bring this up is because inside of each and every one of you, as a creative and as a human too, you have an intuitive knowing that something needs to be expressed or lived into in some way. And it's such a little flame inside of us. And no one really teaches us how to love that flame and harness it and protect it and to feed it so that it gets out into the world. And I feel really so privileged that I got a chance the last 25 years to live that and to watch this thing happen in my life, where I really wish my dad was alive right now so I could, and it's not a told you so dad thing, but it is a little bit of a told you so, like dad, and I used to say in my solo show, people come to see my show and they always love him more at the end because they
Absolutely.
see him as a person, he's Uncle George and now he's really Uncle George. And I really wish my dad could have had that gift of him understanding that when people see our humanity, it is so powerful. And people did see his humanity in his own way and in his own art form. But this part of the humanity, the part where the vulnerable underbelly is, that was hard for him because of his upbringing. And so I'm just really honored that as an artist, I get to do that all the time. And that is my raison d'etre as an artist, is like, just come see my humanity because my humanity is your humanity. Let's just be humans together.
Yes. And I loved that image. You really do stoke that flame, not only for yourself, but for others, because it's true. Not only are we not taught how to nurture that, it's quite the opposite. A lot of times we're told quite the opposite, that it's selfish or self-involved or narcissistic or all these kinds of things, to know.
Or literally sinful. I mean, you think of like
exactly.
people who grow up in very fundamentalist upbringing and they're gay or they're weird in some way, and they're going to hell for this, and it's like, oh my God, it's so horrible.
When I mean, and I know you know it too, I'm able to show up for people way more. I was always trying to be a giver since I was little, but ever since I've done a lot of this work and really, really kind of known my own value and know who I am and what I can give, I am way more generous and way more, it's the opposite.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's because one of the stories you used to tell yourself is, that if I don't give 24/7, I'm selfish.
Yeah.
which is, so you had to prove that wrong, that stance wrong. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so then you attract those that are like, oh, good. Yes, I'll take it. Is that your last drop of blood? Here, let me.
Exactly.
So in that vein, I would say that's how, the young Kelly versus now, how has that work transformed your, life, would you say?
Yeah, it's just been a lot of growing up. This adulting, I turned 60 this year and I feel like I'm finally an adult. I just feel more autonomous than I ever have. And I guess it takes that long. I always used to feel behind. But, for me, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that it's okay to want what I want.
Mm-hmm.
That it doesn't make me selfish, or it doesn't make me some kind of a bad person. Mm-hmm. And that actually, like you just said, if I want what I want and I actually go for it and I get it, it's way easier for me than to actually participate in being connected to the world. Mm-hmm. and giving what the world needs, or at least what I can offer the world. But when we're stingy with ourselves and generous with the world, we live in a box about this big. So, there's something about, and so many of us grew up thinking it has to be hard. Mm-hmm. Because it was hard. Mm-hmm. And we have to make ourselves small because we had to make ourselves small. We had to be quiet, or we had to watch, or for those who aren't people who recede to the background, but more, or we have to like always be in and always be this person, controlling or reactive or whatever it is, whatever the dance is, we're either pulling back or we're into it. But learning that we don't have to do those strategies anymore. They're not needed anymore. And so it's that shedding of that. Yeah. And it is, as you all know here, it's a lifelong process. We're always shedding a new layer. As my friend Julie always says, how big is this fucking onion? Exactly. And I just start to go, it's about the size of the universe, thinking it's the size of the universe. Yeah, it's infinite. It's pretty much infinite, like the universe, we're fucked. Yeah, the onion is forever. There is no center.
But yeah, but I love what you said about, I mean, it doesn't have to be hard. It's like, as creatives, most of us are creatives here. We've got thousands of years of history telling us that as an artist, it's got to be a hard path, which is, that's what we're up against, to change that narrative, first of all.
Yeah.
But second of all, you reminded me of something. When a light switch went off, when it stopped being hard in certain areas for me, I was in Second City, actually. Amy's here, who I was in Second City with, and I wanted to get into the conservatory so bad that I had to have a come to Jesus with myself a little bit. And all of a sudden it hit me. I had like one of these moments where I was like, you know what? All I've been doing is worrying about having people tell me whether I'm good enough or not. I was looking for the laugh, like, and all these things. That's why I was performing, to get the audience to, like, at a girl me. And all of a sudden that moment, I'm like, no, I'm going to perform because I want to spread joy, and I actually want to give something, and I want to make people laugh. And I had that moment, and then my audition was, I don't even know what came out. It was a whole different, that little switch, that that transformation. But I'm going to segue a little bit now, because I want to give people time to ask questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
About the Humans on the Verge, that you've created. Some people know about it here, but some don't know about it at all. So what the Humans on the Verge is and why you're doing that work, you've kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah. So about 5 years ago, I created a coaching program, which started as Women on the Verge. And then about 2 years ago, it's like, no, men need to come and work with us too. So it's Humans on the Verge. And aren't we all on the verge of something? And that's why I named it that, because there's that line we come up against where our life is now too small for us, and there's an edge, and we know we need to cross that edge, and that's scary. And like all the ways that I figured out how I crossed the edge over and over again, I've just built into this coaching program. So it's a year-long coaching program. And really the kind of the three big things we focus on, which is, what's the story you're living, and what's the new story you want to live into. So we're all living a narrative. This is why we have story in our life. Story didn't just come from some alien species at some point and land on Earth. We are hardwired. I'm sure you all know this already. We are hardwired for story, because that's how we make sense of the world. And that's how we make sense of our life. And that's great. Except 99% of the time, we're telling ourselves a story about ourselves that's too small for us. And too small does not mean, I need to go be Michelle Obama or an astronaut, and which you have every permission to go do that thing. But it's like suddenly our clothes don't fit, and we know we need to be bigger. And so there's that thing that happens when you start to want to change the story and live into a new story, where all what we call the saboteurs come showing up, and we're going like, no, you can't go out there. There's crazy people out there, or whatever the saboteurs say to us. And we go, and we shrink back to our old size. So part of it is dreaming into a new story, seeing our story, seeing how our story is archetypal in many ways. I built my program based on something called the heroine's journey, which is generally people 40 and over go marching, we're marching through life, and then we come somewhere in our 40s or 50s and go, what the fuck? This isn't what I wanted at all. And shit's happening, divorce, health scare, whatever it is, and shit's falling apart. And it's like, how do I pick up the pieces? And then that gives us a chance to reestablish a new relationship with our inner self, both our masculine and our feminine self. So both the part that's here to embrace and the part that's here to move out into the world. And so with that, then we reshape ourselves. And that's the cyclical nature of peeling the onion. And then part of that is, and a lot of that's great. And there's a lot of insight in that kind of part of the work, of the narrative part. There's a lot of insight, and that's so great. And learning about our saboteurs and what keeps us stuff. There's a lot of insight about that. But insight without courage to change is meaningless. We could go to therapy for 20 years and have the same insights. And we're just, going around. If anyone's in 12-step meetings and have been there long enough, you're like, that person's been saying that story for the last 10 years and they've gotten nowhere with it. So we need to have courage to change. And partly what brings courage is community. Community brings courage. Inner community, our inner allies, community of transformation, like or create, whatever kind of support group kind of community. And then the people in our lives, the real allies in our life. That's where we get courage. And using allies as examples, as heroes or heroines to follow. And then there's the perseverance part. Change doesn't happen. You can have all the insights and have the courage, but then there's the stick with itedness. There's the falling on your face. There's the learning to do the D+ version. There's the begin again. There's the blank page the next day, the shitty first draft the next day, the begin again. And there's the perseverance. And so that's why I make the program a year-long program, and most people stay with me 2, 3, 4 years, because there is a perseverance that needs to happen. And I've been working with a coach for 5 years now, and I'm in her community because there is a perseverance, because the dream that even the people that come to me in that first year dream they have of the life they think they're going to have, that's sometimes the false dream even still. And they need to unpack a lot of stuff to get to the real dream. And sometimes that real dream doesn't even awaken until year 2 or year 3, like Holly, where suddenly she was like, oh, we're getting the hell out of Dodge and we're going to North Carolina. I'm like, wow, what's going on? What? Huh? So that's what we do in the work. And we have courses that we teach. We have a True Story, which Holly and I teach together. We have True Self, which our other team coach, where we do saboteur work. And then we have a True North course. All that's part of it. It's part of our curriculum. And so that's the work. And really that work and what I've created and the bones of all of it is based on Jungian psychology and coaching stuff that I've learned. But really, it's based on my own journey as a creative. And really the last 25 years of my life, what did it take for me to get all those things, to figure out who I really am, to have the courage to make the change, and then the perseverance to keep going and to keep brushing myself off when I fell down.
And the willing to experiment, like you said, and fall down and all that stuff. Like I've been with you since the beginning of that program. And it's like, I've watched you actually do exactly what you're telling your students to do. And you've honed your program and you've changed it and you've asked for, you did it to the point where I got to tell you guys, this year is going to be off the chains because I'm biased, because I've been involved and I helped her with part of the True Story, writing that curriculum, but it leads one thing to the, it will rock the world.
And you know what it's like? It's like for all of us here when, you're kind of like in the middle, whether you're a songwriter or a story writer or whatever it is, and something's not, it's in there, but it's just not working yet. And you just have to keep working the material a little bit. And that's what I feel like I've been doing with the curriculum. And then finally, about 4 or 5 months ago, it was like, it all went like, and it was like, oh, okay. All right. No one move. Okay. I think we've got it now. I think this is what we need to do. And it really feels like that. Like there's a completion feeling inside. And that happens when, and everything's always got a little something in it. You're like, oh, it needs a little, but it's complete.
No, you got some clear. I got a contact clear.
Yeah,
my program got better. Yeah. So I guess in closing, before we do the Q&A, I'll just say if any of you are in that place where you're feeling like you need, that kind of major life leap, you can reach out to Kelly. I'm going to put her website on, but the best way to get started, honestly, is we're going to do together a thing on the 16th, the gathering of the gifts, which is what we do at the end of the year, which you could tell them why we do that. But it's a great way to start. Like you'll meet some of the community and you kind of see, what the vibe is. And
yeah, this event is based on my own inclination to follow the cycles of the seasons. And always during the winter solstice, I would have in this room here a bunch of friends and we would do a little ritual and a little shedding, kind of clearing out the closets, the inner closets kind of stuff. And then a kind of a turning towards the new year. And this year I'm doing it in 2 parts. We're doing the cleaning out the closets and the shedding, but something we do which is something we don't learn to do much in our culture, is we celebrate the wins.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing in gathering the gifts, two things happen is we're going to together walk through our year, our 2023, and really write down and see through our calendar and photos and all this kind of stuff, like, what did we do this year? Because we're all like, just like, and time, who knows time anymore since the pandemic? I don't know what week it is. I don't know if it's a day or 12 months in the last
almost all
15
of us
minutes.
creatives have never enough disease. So like, I remember
Right.
the first time we
Yes.
did that, it was like, I was one of those people, never enough. And then we had to sit down and look at what we actually accomplished with the year. And then I was like, what am I, fucking nuts?
Right. Exactly. And there's something about that process of like actually letting it enter your body, like,
yeah,
wow, holy shit, I did do stuff. And yes, some things also, we also honor the things that fell apart, or the parts that we avoided, or the actual fucking failures of it, or the disasters, or whatever it was, because it's important to grieve that, it's important to shed it. And it's also important to say, well, maybe something did fall apart or fall behind. Do I want to pick it up next year? And so then you're in a choice point, which is really, really important. We teach that a lot at Humans on the Verge, being in choice. What a concept. And so on the 16th, we're going to do that. And I've got a 25% off coupon for you guys.
yes.
I think the
I'm
event
putting
is
it in the chat right now. So
event's cheap anyway, but it's like even just ridiculous. It covers my costs, basically. We'd love to have all of you there. It's about 4 hours. And then in January, we're going to do something called Light Your Year on Fire, which is then kind of the second half of it, which is, okay, now we know where we are, turning toward the new year and going, okay, what is it that I want to light on fire? What do I really want to commit to? And of course, we'll tell you about our path for doing that if you want to do that with us. But even just as a standalone event, super, super tons of takeaway from both of them. Even if you just came to Gathering the Gifts, tons of takeaway. We get lots of like, oh my God, thank you so much is at the end of those. And I do it for myself every year. And I'm actually going to start my process this weekend. So start unpacking my year and seeing what the fuck I did this year.
Yeah. And so, so I'm going to open it up for questions here. And then you can also, and just so everybody knows, all of my writer people, I'm about to announce too, that I'm going to, like I said, do that slow writing challenge.
Great.
Literally, it's going to be a minimum of 2 years. And I have different ways you can get involved in that. Everything from, extreme coaching with me to the very light, almost just following me along on the journey so that you get inspired. You'll be able to just go to my website and get on a call with me if that's something you're like, wait a minute, I need to, but you're going to hear a lot more from me on that very soon. So don't worry. But if you're interested, reach out and ask me, because the goal is going to be to actually have fun with it. And it's something that, by the way, Kelly and I sometimes do in tandem. In fact, a couple of you in here are in both our programs at the same time. But I'm over in Humans on the Verge also, so I'm double.
She's a team coach with me. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What are your questions? What are your insights? Teach us something.
So you can see everybody. Okay, I see Deborah's hand first.
Hi, first, thank you so much for sharing with us all. It's been really wonderful. One thing that sort of jumped out when you were talking about the saboteur, which of course, I'm assuming most of us have.
Yes, if you're human.
Yeah. And I was just wondering if you would share like one little trick of like how you deal with the saboteur.
Yeah, it's a great question. We have a whole 8-week course, True Self, that we teach all the tricks with it. But here's the key about the saboteur to remember is that the saboteur is ultimately a fight or flight reaction to stepping out of your comfort zone. And so it goes into, holy shit, everything's on fire mode. And so you have to calm yourself down. So any kind of mindfulness work that you already do, that can help a lot in the moment. And the thing is also is to recognize it. The number one thing is to recognize when it walks in the room and to name it, not like Jerry. I mean, you could name it Jerry if you wanted to, but to name it, to be like, it's the one where you've written all day and then you reread it and then the voice comes in and goes, well, that's a piece of shit. And it's like, well, I don't know if that's productive or not. Like, that's not going to help me make this draft any better. That's if it's that much of a knee cutter or a ball buster, it's a saboteur. And so it's really the very first thing is to be like, okay, that's my inner critic.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. And it, and it's like, oh, that might be familiar, that voice. Like that might have been, maybe my mom wasn't a big fan of my creativity or was afraid of it because her mother was afraid of hers. Like whatever there's some sort of family storyline around all that usually. And you don't have to go into that, but just to notice it and to start to distance from it. And say, thank you for your not very helpful feedback. And one thing I love to do, Deborah, is I tell my clients sometimes, especially if they're like the saboteurs, like right here, buy it a ticket to Bali and like watch it get on the airplane and like leave and say to it, like, it's got you've got 3 weeks at a really nice hotel. So you're going to go off to there and do that. But I do have to say, the more you can regulate your nervous system, that really helps too, because that's all that is. It's a storyline wrapped around a autonomic limbic system response to stepping out of your comfort zone. That's all saboteurs are.
Good. Good answer.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hello. Forgive me that I didn't turn my camera on. We have like 3 different web things going, and I'm afraid if I turn it on, I'll lose you.
No worries.
So forgive me. This might be a 2-parter because I'm kind of interested in, this ties into both this being a saboteur and being authentic. I wasn't going to ask this question, but now that you said that stuff, so this is a twofer, so forgive me. So of course, I think like others, I've had those moments where you're writing and you're like, who am I to write this? Who's gonna want to hear it? And then every once in a while I get the, damn, that was really good. Like, I think there's something to it. And then I go, oh wait, I'm being an egomaniac. So how do you balance between not thinking you're terrible and not feeling like you're an egomaniac? So that was kind of the follow-up. But the question that I originally had was, when I was younger, I used to write a lot of poetry and I wrote it in rhymes. And I realized as I got older, it's because I love music and I was actually writing song lyrics, but I didn't realize it when I was younger, right? And so I was told when I was young that that's really stupid and why don't I try writing poems that don't rhyme? So now it's very difficult to get back into that place. So what if there's something that you really love doing, but you have been, I'm 54, so I'm talking like, 40 years ago. So how do you tap back into something that isn't natural anymore, but that used to be, if that makes some sense?
Oh God, Steph, it totally does. First of all, the egomaniac versus the imposter syndrome, like I said earlier, either one of those judgments about ourselves, I'm being an egomaniac or I'm a piece of shit, are ego responses. And the ego response that I mean is that it's a false self response. And so the true self knows what it knows and knows what it loves and knows what it needs to say, and doesn't have any qualms about any of it. So the minute we get into this hemming and hawing about ourselves, either direction, either one of those are a saboteur. So the saboteur comes in and says, "Oh, I'm an imposter. I don't really deserve to be here." Or the other one is, "Oh, aren't you big for your britches, Missy?" Right? Either one of them. So they're there to keep you small. Both of them there to keep you small. They're just coming from 2 different directions. And the thing about creativity is there's the creative act and doing it for the joy of the moment and doing it for ourselves. I really believe that we have to do it for ourselves first. Mm-hmm. We have to please ourselves first. We have to really give ourselves great joy. I mean, this is something I learned from my dad and his process. He used to say, He used to say to the audience, "Oh, you all think I'm here for you. I'm sorry, but I'm not. I'm here for me. You're here for me, and I'm here for me because I'm here just to give myself joy in what I've been thinking all day." Now, he was a person whose his joy and what he was thinking all day got a lot of other people got joy from it, but he had to please himself first with it always. And so that's the very first thing. And that might lead you some breadcrumbs, Stephanie, into however old you were, letting yourself go back to like doing a little imaginal journey about being that age again. And we do a lot of these imaginal journeys in my work. I'm always taking us back into some place and some journey. But letting 14-year-old Stephanie or 12-year-old or 10-year-old, whatever it was, giving her permission to not have the outside world be involved with this at all and just let yourself do it for yourself.
Yes.
That's great. Okay, thank you. That was great. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And I'm excited for you to rediscover that joy for yourself. And one more thing about feedback. When we do share our stuff with the world and people resonate with it, then you know that people resonate with it. And your audience doesn't have to be everyone on the planet. I stopped myself creatively because of my dad. I used to think to myself, if 10,000 people aren't stomping their feet and chanting my name, then I'm a piece of shit and I don't know what I'm doing. Wow, that's going to stop a person from learning how to do a craft even.
100%.
Yeah.
I've been on a tangent about that, so I will piggyback because I as artists, I feel like it's the business world that has told us that, we need to have a product before we've ever even done anything.
Yes.
Whereas scientists get to experiment forever and they might through. And it's actually the truth about artists too. This doing it for yourself first. You can't know what it's going to be until you've actually gone on the journey. To pretend otherwise is just not the truth anyway. And so you have to do it for yourself. Otherwise, why do it? And then you guarantee yourself success because either it was a story that was for you to help your growth, which is no small fucking thing. That's important.
It's really, really important. It's the self-work we do is telling ourselves our stories. Because that's how I healed a lot of myself, was telling my stories in living rooms and in grad school and all of that, because we need to witness our own story to heal ourselves. And sometimes when we do that work, the world needs to witness it too, in order for them to heal themselves also. And we're not in charge of that part of it.
No, yeah, you might hit on something that's universal and the timing is right, and therefore it's going to fly like the wind out into the world. Or it's going to make you fly like the wind because it made you grow, like you, Stephanie, you know how songs can be everything. Like there's been a couple songs that have been my friends, literally, like they got me through a time.
Yes.
What if your own song that you haven't written yet is supposed to be one of your friends that gets you,
Right.
Yeah. And I want to say this is such a rich topic. Part of the reason we are artists and creatives is because some part of us was not seen and heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if we don't do the work for ourselves, then we are even doing that same damage to ourselves. We're saying to ourselves, we're not worthy of being seen and heard by ourselves.
Yeah, we took over for yeah.
So write the poetry in the rhythm, write the songs, write the Chaucer-esque, whatever it is, paint the mountain blue, because that's the thing that needs to move through you and needs to be seen and heard through you and by you. And then if a crowd gathers and says, what the hell is this? My God, this is amazing. Then yay.
Then why the fuck wouldn't they say that, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's the grand irony. The only people that ever really, the things we remember, it's because it was that unique and so true to them. And yet we get told all the time, no, do this. Don't do what you want to do.
God, look at Taylor Swift right now. She's having a moment. She just pours herself out into her lyrics and just lives her Taylor life. And everyone's like, I'm in because this is my life too, because she's a human and she's just being human in front of us.
Yep.
And that's all art is showing all the different little flavors and facets of being human.
Totally.
Thank you.
And come on in.
So as someone else who has also stepped out of their father's shadow when they died and stepped into his spotlight. So when my dad died, I took over the company that I had been working with him for 16 years. How do you separate that? This was his vision, this is my vision, and they both need to move forward, but they're different lines and they're different stories.
Oh, wow. Such a great question. How long has it been since your father died?
12 years.
Yeah. So it's been 15 for me. So it's a process. And part of it is I have found the way I've done it is I made sure I took care of his legacy and what was important about it and what was foundational about it. And so for me, it was literally like taking care of his legacy, donating his archives to the National Comedy Center, making sure we present his hidden material and his old material in new ways and that the world still sees him because his voice and his take on the world was so important. So the documentaries like that, future projects we do, but there's something about something that your father built that needs to live on. And then there's also something true, which they are gone. They are no longer here. And we are the next generation. And we have our own perspective. And we are here as a generation and as the one who stands on their shoulders to break the generational something or other and to live it forward and to move it forward into what the world needs now. And so doing that with my book, that's what I was doing. I was saying, yes, amazing dad, amazing human. And here's all the emotional intelligence part of it. Here's all of the EQ. Here's all of the humanity part of it. I wasn't saying he's bad, me victim, him, da-da-da. It was like, look at us doing our dance together. And then the beautiful thing I got from that was the world going, wow, yes, now we know even more of him. And his voice is still as relevant today because the minute something happens in the Supreme Court, George Carlin's trending on Twitter again, So there's something that inside of you about this business, a vision you have, a direction you want it to go that may step a little bit on the edge of your father's, what he built, but it's a necessary, as it is with all generations, it's a necessary growing into the next thing. Mm-hmm. And let yourself just meditate on that and maybe do some journaling around that about, what is it? What's your vision for this? What's the reach or what's the internal culture part that needs to change? Whether is it the impact on the work you do in the world or the internal way you do the work or your internal way you do the work. Maybe that's what needs to grow into its next iteration. And trust that you're both honoring him, but really, we really honor our parents when we move into our unique voices. Mm-hmm. Does that help, Gwen?
Yes, thanks.
Good.
Yes. And I know, Valerie, we were talking about this week because but your dad is alive. So that's a whole other challenge.
It is. I agree.
Your own way. Yeah. Linda.
Kelly, thanks so much. Everything that you've been saying has been so powerful. And I've got so much baggage. It's just not even funny. And I've been to a lot of counseling. And one of the things that you said that kind of sparked something within me was, you can go to counseling and you can like rehash the same stuff over and over. And in your brain, you can kind of break it down into these very, I don't know. It's almost like they're almost impersonal things, it's very separate from you. But I find that, I guess what I was curious about for you was there some moment or something that you did that like gave you that like flame of courage to kind of move forward with what you wanted to do? Because I was not I was a creative when I was young. And then I went into IT, and IT is very black and white. You know, your code either works or it doesn't work. And it was very safe. It was very safe. And I
Yes.
could excel, and oh, she's such a great programmer. And then I got sick, like you were talking about, all those things that happen as we get older. And I got sick, and I've not worked for a number of years, but then I tapped back into my creative. But the courage is still kind of still needs to be ramped up a little bit, because I'm struggling with that. And I can hear my parents going, "Oh, you won't make any money at that, or you won't be any good at that, or whatever." And I'm trying to silence those voices. I mean, they're gone. I'm 66.
Yeah, but those are the saboteur voices, right? Sometimes they sound like our parents, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I think with the courage piece is, it is a commitment. It is a stance we need to take for ourselves. And you mentioned getting sick. And there's some stance you had to take, Linda, in order to get well. You had to decide to say yes to treatment or whatever it was that happened. But and every day we wake up, we have a choice: live, die. And we can either, and the die part isn't the, but it is the choice of backing away, staying the victim, deciding that that those voices are more right than wrong, those saboteur voices. And the living part comes from, like I said, I mean, it is an onion peeling thing, but that facing death. My mother's death gave me the initial thing of like, oh shit, this thing doesn't, this is real. Like, this is not some like thing in a movie that happens. Like, my mother was diagnosed, she had advanced liver cancer when she was diagnosed. Like, she just thought it was gallbladder or something. And she died 5 weeks later. She might as well have been hit by a bus. Yeah. So it went very quickly, and we're a family that didn't talk about anything. So when none of us were like, oh, there was no fucking Enya candles and kumbaya. It was like, we're all like, oh, she'll be fine. She'll make it for a few more months. I mean, it was horrible. You can read about it in my book. But it is that thing where there's a fire, Linda. And the fact that you turned back to your creativity already, that move, that's in you, girl. That thing that said yes to that. And so it is a yesing to something. It's a yesing to life every day, and being real with ourselves. Okay, what do I got? 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? I don't know. I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. One of the first questions we ask our clients is the deathbed question. I always ask them, if any of you like do my Humans on the Verge thing and come over to my website and look and whatever and have a call with me, it's the question I'm going to ask you. You're on your deathbed. What will you have regretted not doing? Because it's that serious. And so we have to get that serious with ourselves with this stuff.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I feel like I've been given this second chance.
Yes.
Not only with life, not with, with my health, because I am doing much better. And I did take charge. So yes, you were right about that. But the fact that I didn't decide to go back to IT, I decided that, life's too short. That was the safe way out. It was not fulfilling.
Exactly.
This is my passion. I want to write.
And I work with someone else who got a second chance. She got a stem cell replacement, and she got a second life. And a lot of people with what she has didn't get that second life. And so she too is, she made a big move to save her life and her work. And it's been the slippery slope. And she's 4 years in with me. And finally, because it's true. We get the wake up call and we go, holy shit. And we change a lot of things. And then we kind of just shape back into the old shape a little bit because it's comfortable, because that's what comfort zone means. So it's the fact that you're here tonight. You're hearing me. We're having this conversation. Welcome to your next wake up call. You just had it just now.
Yep. And I've already decided for you. You better join me in that slow rate challenge. Come write a novel with me. Yeah. All right. We've got two more.
Great.
And yeah, Noelle is next.
Crap. I was hoping you would say it was Amy's turn.
No.
You got your hand up first.
Oh, crap. So, ditto. Especially, my psychologist of 27 years just retired. And we did cognitive therapy, and, she like set me free. She's like, you have a great tribe, with your writing group and, support. And I'm coming to that February, I'll have 35 years sober. And so what you said about, yeah, thank you. I've heard that. Yeah. That same bullshit from
You
that
know,
same
you've heard
person.
it. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I know this pattern. I just got 2 new sponsees, and the differences and the drama and freaking out about a broken refrigerator, and it's like, well, you're going to get drunk over it. Oh, well, no, but it's like, well, I don't want to hear anything else, really. Just don't drink. Okay. All right. Bye. I mean, my problem is I'm getting to that point where when you ask the death question,
Yeah.
I've lived a great life. I don't have any regrets. I'm just afraid of not doing more.
Well,
I
great.
don't like the last time, and I thought about, the last time I really wrote deeply, I ended up in a mental hospital, but that was a different time. I mean, I have this abject terror of
Yeah. And so this and the more, it's just now about you being quiet and still enough and having a safe space enough to really give yourself permission to define what that is. And it doesn't have to be, like you said, you've had a great life, and pat yourself on the fucking back, girl. Like, yeah, you had a great life. You fucking did it. You've done things for yourself. You've made things, whatever it was you've done. And there's something else that still wants to participate in some way. And so again, it's the peeling the onion moment. Yeah, you did all that. Okay, now we're peeling the onion again. And it's like, all right, what's here? What's the thing? Whatever it is. Oh, I need to raise llamas, or I need to make sure kids have, their cleft palate surgery. Like, whatever it is what it is. Or I need to write a song, or I just need to sing a song all day. But you getting to define it, you have permission right now, after having this great life, to define what more is to you.
Mm-hmm.
And Holly, you can wipe that little smirk off your face of pride and joy. Okay. Knock that off.
Well, is one of my longest clients, people.
Awesome. Awesome.
And Amy, Amy and then Sergey will be our last one. We can't pick any more after that, but Kelly, Amy is one of my dear friends. She's my family. Yeah, finally you two meet. Anyway.
Yay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of like what Noelle said, like ditto this entire time. I'm just in a certain place like this week right now, but ever since 4:30 my time, I've had just like lightning bolts going through my veins of like, this is everything that I needed. And Holly knows this all too well, because I'm always like crying about it. I also had a solo show, and it's important, very important to me. My whole life I'm a caregiver, like children, mostly nannying, and, that I don't take care of myself very much, but I'm always, I thrive on like being very needed. And I'm also been through 12 steps. And that's what my show is about, is like recovery, treatment centers for addiction, and going through that for eating disorders. And it's a dark,
funny, by the way.
It's very fun. It's actually very funny.
It would have to be.
It has to be. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. It's hilarious. And also like you will cry too. And,
Yes.
So in the midst of nannying and also choosing to not have children with my husband and making that choice, I'm like, what is my legacy? What's the footprint I'm leaving on this earth? Besides, I helped out a lot of moms. And, I wrote this show and I put it up at Second City. It did great. Went to Edinburgh last year. It did
Congratulations.
great. Thank you. Critically and audience responsiveness, it does great. It doesn't sell a lot of tickets. I don't know if the subject line is a real. Yeah, that sounds like a good.
Well, it's the solo show world, and Amy, it's part of why I built my coaching program, because I couldn't make a living being a solo artist. It's just, unless you're John Leguizamo,
I know. I wish.
and even he, I don't think he can make a living on that either, but it's not theater is not a moneymaker. It's a passion. It has to be a passion project. And it's essential that we do theater work, because it's where humans gather and tell each other stories around the fire pit. So
it's encouraging to hear, because the financial losses, it did go off Broadway this summer, and I pitched it really hard, and I got a theater to present it, and it did not financially, it didn't fill seats. And I had done a festival that did well in February in New York City, and I came home and I talked to my husband, he's a working actor. I said, I think, if we're cool with this, I'd like for this year to be the year that I give myself a chance to only focus on the show and not do the nanny stuff, because the full-time, it's very hard to compartmentalize and come home after nannying at 6 p.m. and eat dinner and then go, okay, I'm going to sit down and bang some out now. It's really difficult for me. I'm 41 and I'm just in a place where I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so we talked responsibly about finances, and we're like, okay. And then the writer's strike happened, and then
the actor's strike.
And then the actor's strike happened, and he stopped working. And then I did not make a dime in New York City off Broadway. And I took it as this sign. I've been very depressed ever since of, well, that was the universe saying, you're done. Like, you gave yourself this chance, and that's it. And I kind of decided to have like a funeral for the show and lay her to rest. And that's it. And it's like, after just sitting here for the last 90 minutes, trying to not cry, because it just feels like I know it's not over, but I also don't know how to. I just don't know. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And so I just want to name, just so you know, that you're in it. You're in it. It's gonna go where it's gonna go and do what it's gonna do. But you're in a place of hitting a new level with it, a new reality with it. And now deciding, like Noelle a little bit, like what, and so now what, right? But there is a time where, it doesn't mean it's over forever. It doesn't, but it does, there's a come to Jesus moment here for yourself. And grieving's really, really important, and I know for me, when I couldn't write my second book, I hit a wall like this too. It was like, oh, I'm supposed to just be a person who writes my books all the time now, and I have a solo show that goes with it, and that's what I'm going to do. And I could make money for a year, because I would get a little bit of money for this and that, and it's just, it's the reality of that is so hard. So there's an adulting moment here, and there's a creative moment here, and you're in both of them. And your voice is important, and your story is important. And I know that your story is probably saving lives when people hear it. So, or getting people to understand what their family members went through. I mean, eating disorders is a huge issue still. So, it's the thing I want to say is, when things fall apart, it doesn't mean we did anything wrong. It's just things are falling apart, which means that they're going to morph into something else. We only get loamy soil to grow good things in by plants dying. It's all part of the same process. And you're in it, just like the creative process, you're in it. And so be really, really gentle with yourself, Amy, really kind and really gentle to yourself, and you're someone who admitted in this place, and you probably admitted all the way, I don't take care of myself, I take care of other people. Well, maybe this is really about, it's time for you to fucking take care of yourself, not financially and creatively. And it's my year for the solo show because that fell apart. There's something more essential now that you need to take care of, Amy. That then when you go back out into the world, that will be handled and you'll be able to show up even bigger and even bolder and even more creative and more innovative in whatever you do in the world. But I see it as a way of like the world saying, okay, now you really have to take care of yourself, darling. You have to take care of your heart.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
That was beautiful, Kelly.
Oh, thank you.
Damn, Kelly just dropped the mic.
Just from my heart. This is what I'm hearing. It's what I'm hearing in my own heart, my own intuition about it. All right. I believe Russia is calling.
Yes, it's 9:00 though. I want to be mindful of the time. So Sergey, we got to do a quick one here and then we'll thank Kelly for being here. Or it's fine. Yeah, it's whatever time it is.
I rambled on, so it's my fault for going late.
No, it's good. Sergey, go.
Hi guys, hi Kelly,
Hello.
Holly. That's just the question that is spinning on my mind. It's a bit out there.
Good.
It's very simple. How do you think? What is the secret of Harry Potter book series success?
The secret of what?
Harry Potter series success.
Oh,
these books.
wow.
How do you think? What is the secret of this? Because
Well, from my Jungian archetypal mythology background, depth psychology background, it has to do with the fact that we all know there is magic in life. I mean, we're all creatives here. We're all plugged into it. When we sit down to write and something comes out of our pen or out of our guitar or whatever it is, and we're not in control of it, we're having some conversation with our creative, deep imagination unconscious. That's magical. That's beyond the ego. Anything beyond the ego equals magic because the ego's like, I don't know where that came from. I don't know what's going on. I don't have control of that. And so I think it's a way for us in all of those fantasy series is a way for us to acknowledge that we get to be in relationship with the magic and going to Hogwarts. Oh, I went to a place called Pacifica. That's my Hogwarts. We went there and we did depth psychology and we learned about synchronicities and all this kind of stuff. And so I really do believe it's just a display, an archetypal display of the numinous, of that thing beyond the ego, the deep imagination, the collective unconscious, that we call magic, that people used to call miracles or whatever or gods. People used to call them gods. They still do. So I really do think it from a kind of a Jungian perspective. It's about that.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Way better answer than I even imagined you would answer to that. I love it. And it's so true. It is magic. There is magic, and creativity is most definitely.
Yeah.
What's interesting?
Kelly, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
My pleasure.
This was amazing. And yeah,
well, your community is amazing. They're all amazing people, and so honored to meet all of you and to be in the room with you and to have the conversation that we get to, we get to have these conversations. I mean, that it's so amazing, right? And just want to just say again that just, this is my bliss. This is my joy. This is where I live, whether I'm having it through a coaching conversation or writing a story about my life. This is the conversation I love to have. And I just kept following those breadcrumbs. Like, that's the more that I wanted. That's the dent I want to make in the world, is I want to have powerful human conversations where I get to rip my mask off so that everyone else can rip their mask off in the room and go, hey, I'm human too. Oh, are you human? Oh yeah, me too. And we can keep doing that. And so thank you, Holly, for giving me the chance to be in such a profoundly smart and amazing, heartfelt community tonight, and to share our joy of working together, the work we get to do together, the work you help me with, the work I help you with, and some of the projects we're working on. And so thank you. This was such a you know, I'm going to be up till 1 a.m. now, like I just did a show or something. I'm going to be all jazzed.
Well, and I think all of you see that's why it is so important, community. I mean, as artists, we need each other, really, like need, not luxury, need, because yeah, we're on our own in a lot of ways. And it's like suddenly we share our stories. Yes, share our stories out in the world, but we have to share our stories with each other as we're growing and peeling
Well,
the onion.
yes. I mean, this is an audience. When we share our stories here, it's the same thing, you know. So I hope to see you all at Gathering the Gift. Please come.
Yes,
It's an incredibly powerful 4 hours. We'd love to have you in the room.
we will have so much
No
fun.
expectation or anything. Just come be part of our community. Get on my mailing list. When you do that, you get on my mailing list too. But come unpack your year, honor your year. It'll help you with your saboteur work for all you saboteurs out there. And yeah, and just come and join, you know, come be in part of my community for the half of the day.
Yes, it'll be very fun. All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye,